Hello, welcome to my second part of this election thing. Um, I do know that, um, so now that it has been official for, I want to say, 4 or 5 hours now, probably six, I don't know, haven't been keeping count. I mean, it's been known for quite a while that Biden was going to win. I just, it's official now. There's no more there's no guessing or no need to worry. A lot of it was hanging up on Nevada and Arizona, hoping that they would get in their uh, uh, ballots first. So I kind of want to take a look at their map, the electoral map. Another reason why I hate the electoral map because, again, it's just kind of dumb that we're relying on electoral votes. So when we look at the map, um, North Nevada and Pennsylvania were the last two that were um, that we were waiting on. Uh, by the end of the night, um, the map was pretty much. This was pretty much. Um, actually, if we take off, let me just take off the few that weren't counted prior to today. We were pretty much left. Oh, and I think Minnesota wasn't on there yet. I think this is what kind of an idea of where it was at prior to um, prior to today. Um, this was what we were left with on election night, and so the idea was that there was a lot of panic among the Democrats because they didn't know sort of which way it was going to go. Um, uh, the fact that the Republicans were able to keep Texas and Florida made it a sprint, made it a sort of a big issue that Biden wins Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Those were the three states that were that were on the um, that were on the that he needed. Um, and going by the previous election, Trump had won Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. So if Trump had won those again, it was game over. Um, if you could see, well, and he wouldn't need Minnesota or any of the other North Carolina, Georgia, or Arizona. He would have easily won it. But once we saw Minnesota go blue and Wisconsin and Michigan, Pennsylvania wasn't. Nobody had Pennsylvania. This is kind of where it had been for the past 2 days. Uh, and everybody was hoping, either relying on Pennsylvania or relying on Nevada and Arizona because that's all Biden would have needed uh, to win the electoral college. And for the past 2 days, we were a lot of the Democrats were on edge because uh, they knew Pennsylvania wasn't going to get their votes in early, so they were hoping Nevada and Arizona would have gotten their votes early. And if they had gotten those votes early, or if they had counted faster, which is what the past 2 days and the past 2 days of memes have been like. Why isn't Nevada counting fast enough? Um, because already by Tuesday night, people had already called Arizona for Biden, even though I think that was they were a little ahead of themselves because Arizona still had about 20 to 30,000 votes that were still being counted. Actually, 100,000 votes that were still being counted in Arizona that could have, if they were more Trump votes, they could have tilted it the other way. So it was a little premature to call Arizona for uh, Biden, I believe, because it could have gone the other way. And when you look at 2016 or 2018, not 2016, 2018, it took 6 days after the for the Senate race to finally be counted by the AP. But AP went ahead and just called it for Arizona. Fox News called it for Arizona. It was a little premature. But if you look at Nevada, that's why there were so many memes about Nevada, is because everybody was waiting for Nevada. The reason Nevada took forever was because Nevada wasn't, they hadn't really had that much they hadn't really had that much volume uh, of mail-in ballots before, so that's why it took them a while to count those ballots. But the memes were hilarious, um, and so Nevada, it took it. That's why they took their time, is because they had an influx of mail-in ballots that had to still be counted. So the first few days, hopes were on Nevada and Arizona. Then the next day, it was on Georgia, to at least get some of them. Then in the final, yesterday and today, it was more waiting on Pennsylvania, because Pennsylvania had most of its ballots coming in, and so um, they were getting closer to finishing counting. Arizona still is counting and still hasn't been projected, so they might be done by today or tomorrow later, but it's looking more and more like Biden is going to win the state. I just felt that it was premature to call it on Tuesday night, even though it was only 80% in. It was 80% in even for Pennsylvania, Georgia, North Carolina, and Nevada. Had they called it prematurely for them, it would have shown that, it could have changed. And we saw that in Georgia and Pennsylvania, that had uh, saw it in Georgia and Pennsylvania that Biden was behind and took the lead, but that was expected because most of the mail-in ballots were going to be from Democratic uh, Democratic more Democratic voters than Republican voters. So that was the whole chaos between these 4 days, was trying to figure out who was going to win this election, because it was like, who's going to win, is it, or not who was going to win, but where was Biden going to claim victory from? Alaska was mostly going to Trump, so that one was thrown out the window. It was all on Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, and Pennsylvania. Those four states was the ones that everybody was keeping their eyes on. If Trump had won Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia, um, all Biden would have needed is Arizona and Nevada. That's why the first couple of nights, people were like, hoping that Nevada would have counted faster, but that wasn't the case. And so early this morning, not too early, around like afternoon, uh, like 10 o'clock this morning, that's when Pennsylvania turned blue. and so it put Biden over the 270. And so here we are. Another reason for the delay in the counting was because Trump was suing those states, and so they were told not to count them, and so they had to put them aside, and then once they could count them, they started to recount it. So it was more of Trump trying to delay them from counting the votes, and that's why it kind of took forever for states like Georgia and Pennsylvania to count out their ballots. But even before, a lot of the Republican legislatures in certain states were preventing people from trying to process before the election. Instead, they made them wait till election day or till after election day to start counting those votes, even though they knew that a majority of people were going to vote by mail this year. So it kind of really slowed down. That's why I kind of understood that this year we weren't going to know on election night. That was already given. We weren't going to know right away, but and a lot of people were anxious. We were all anxious because it took so long. We didn't know how many votes were going for who, how many votes, how long it was going to take for. We weren't sure how long it was going to take for us to find out, where these states were going. And so counting continues, even though Biden is the president-elect, they're still counting votes across the state. So in Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, North Carolina, they're still counting all those other states where votes are still being counted. In Arizona, there's been protests already to re-vote, to redo the vote. I don't know how that's possible, but they wanna redo. I find that not possible at all. In Georgia, there's still a ton of votes coming in. In North Carolina, there's still a ton of votes coming in. Most of it has to do with mail-in ballots, especially from the military. So that's another thing you would think Trump would want to wait. And I think that's why he isn't conceding yet. It's because he wants to wait for those other votes to come in to see if it'll change his way. But at this point, they're not really. It's not really going to change the way it is. I mean, Biden has already passed 270. Even if he were to win these other states, he would still be behind. And Biden is actually on track to win North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. So it's really unlikely that Trump is going to win those 4 other states. And a lot of it has to do with the kinds of ballots that were being counted. For example, in Arizona, we know that they started counting the early ballots, then the mail-in ballots, and then they first started counting election day ballots, then early and mail-in ballots, then ballots that were mailed but were most likely brought in after or on election day, not after election day, but on election day, which is why it's the reason, even though most of the mail-in ballots are Democratic, there are Trump supporters who have received mail-in ballots, but have decided, who may have decided that they wanted to go in on election day. That's why Trump, even though he's not winning the state of Arizona yet, he is catching up. He is cutting into not cutting into, but he's getting closer to Biden's lead. He is not, uh, from what is said, he is not. Uh, it's not like he's cutting into his. He has to have a certain amount in order to catch up to maybe even get a, close to a tie or even close to even going past him. But in order for him to do that, he would have to, with more ballots coming in, he would have to be over 60% in those ballots in order to catch up to him and even cross him. But it's not looking like that. And in fact, majority of the ballots, he's like 53%. So he's catching up, but there's a least chance that he'll be able to either tie with him or surpass him. I know a lot of people were asking me what's going on with Arizona. It's it's just that's how it is. That's how Arizona is. It's not surprising because Arizona that happened in 2018. A lot of people were waiting for Arizona, and even Trump tried to consider it voter fraud. That it was those mail-in ballots were considered fraud, even though they came in on election day or before election day. It's just mail-in votes, so him trying to call it voter fraud is not it's not voter fraud. We've dealt with this before. This isn't anything new, and so that's why Biden had a big lead ahead in the beginning, but now that they're starting to count in these uh, ballots, these other ballots, some of them are more for Trump, and so that's why he's kind of catching up. Um, if we go back, uh, in Pennsylvania, they have it different. So if you have a ballot, you have a mail-in ballot, you go to the polls and you have to bring three things. You have to bring the ballot, the envelope, and I believe the envelope with it. If you don't, and you wanted to vote on election day, um, and you came in and you didn't bring those three things, they would have given you what's called a provisional ballot. Um, and so what that is it's the ballot that is counted last. Um, and so provisional ballots uh, are counted at the end because they want to make sure that the person hasn't voted before. And so that's what kind of took so long in Pennsylvania, was because some people had provisional ballots, and so they were still counting those at towards the end of like yesterday and today. So that's why Pennsylvania kind of took a while. These are close races, so that's why a lot of these races were kind of, the stations didn't want to call them right away. They could have called them, but and you know, if they were to call them early and then they were to flip back, it would kind of defeat the purpose. They were just being cautious, and so that's why it kind of took them a while before they finally said, okay, we're calling Pennsylvania for Biden. So it wasn't that they didn't want to call them or call it for Biden. They just wanted to make sure that enough votes were counted, because if not enough votes are counted, and there's still a certain amount of votes that are out there, it could go either way, and it could potentially turn. Um, it could potentially just flip it back. You know, the whole reason we kind of go back to 2000 is because in 2000 they called the state for Florida. They called Florida for Gore, and then it flipped back, um, and eventually it was actually Bush who won the state, and they just don't want to have that happen again. Um, and in this election, we've kind of seen a lot. Um, uh, it was inevitable that Biden was going to win. I believe that with the certain uh, catastrophes, for example, the whole coronavirus, had that not have have that not have happened, I believe that uh, Trump could have won. I believe that Trump could have won by using the economy uh, for his uh, to get himself reelected. But since the failure to address the coronavirus kind of really blew his chances. And so today, when it was called for Biden, he was on the golf course golfing, and of course he didn't want to believe the results. That's not surprising. Uh, and so I believe that we are going to go through some recounts. We are going to go through some court battles, and uh, it's just so. I kind of want to switch it over to show you his Twitter and show you what he has tweeted. He tweeted 55 minutes ago, 71 million legal votes, the most ever for a sitting president. Okay, that part's true. He did get 71 million votes, but he's he still hasn't won. Um, then earlier, before that, he tweeted, "The observers were not allowed into the counting rooms. I won the election, got 71 million illegal votes. Bad things happened, which our observers were not allowed to see. Never happened before. Millions of mail-in ballots were sent to people who never asked for them." Again, not true. Even Twitter has said this claim about the election as fraud is disputed. I won this election by a lot. Again, not true. He did not win. In fact, he even hasn't won the popular vote again, like in 2016. Um, uh, People were screaming, "Stop the count," and "We demand transparency," as legal observers were refused admittance into count rooms. Not true. In every state, they usually have a Republican and a Democrat looking at the votes, and so he spews this falseness because he's mad that he didn't win. And like I said before, he doesn't have that view of being an outsider anymore. Um, in 2016, I believe the only reason he won was because uh, he viewed himself as this outsider. He viewed himself as this person who wasn't a politician, who was a famous real estate mogul, and so this year he doesn't have that. This year he has a failed presidency, failed leadership, uh, and we've seen it throughout these past 4 years. And so he wants to argue that um, he can't argue that he's an outsider anymore. He can't argue that him not being president, things would have been better. Um, so it just it doesn't work for him anymore. And so I think that's why this election was more of a showing of what people really what people kind of woke up to instead of that belief that he is is a capable president. So here we are, the map again. Oh, actually, I forgot Nevada was already called for Biden as well. So here we are. This is the real map now. Arizona's still counting votes. Alaska, it's most likely going to go to Trump. Georgia, I feel like Biden will get Arizona and Georgia. Trump will get North Carolina, and then uh, he will also get Alaska. And so, just like 2016, just like 4 years ago, um, the opposite is in effect. Uh, Biden's at 306 and Trump is at 232, and so that is the final result. Uh, Trump was at 306 last election, but this election he is at um, he's going to be at 232 eventually. So for the Republicans, it's going to be a sort of a wake up call, especially since Trump has this sort of skewed vision for himself. Uh, uh, and he's got to go out and tell his supporters that he's lost, which he's not going to do. Um, but he needs to understand that um, if he doesn't win, that like past presidents, they're or past, I'm sorry, not presidents, past people who have not won the presidency need to understand that, and I don't know. That's the uncertainty about what's going to happen next. Is what is it going to take for Trump to sort of exit not only the White House but exit, I guess, um, the Republican, trying to think, Republican sphere. Um, I feel like Republicans are going to have to either distance themselves from Trump, or in turn, they are going to sort of find either a more radical candidate because they saw it worked 4 years ago. But I think they should be doing the opposite, which is finding someone who is going to put the party back to norm. With the Democrats, it's going to be working on expanding their outreach, especially for Latinos and um, even voters in the rural area. Um, Lat- Latinos actually happened to help turn Arizona blue, but it was the ones in Florida that were sort of upset that uh, the Democrats weren't really talking to them. So that's kind of why they felt Trump was a better candidate. Um, so I feel like the Democrats as well are going to also have to do an autopsy of this election and sort of understand how they can further outreach in this election. Um, I know they had hopes on Texas. I know how they had hopes on Florida, but that's sort of what kind of might have turned them, might have not turned them blue. But it was a close one in both, and mostly Florida. Um, and as you saw, Florida was able to count their ballots, get them all counted by election day, even enough to have a projection. Um, but that didn't happen with the other states because they were getting pushback from Republicans who found this weird um, idea that mail-in ballots were fraud, and so it took them a lot longer uh, that's why it took them a lot longer uh, to count those ballots. So that is that. So the question now is, what is Trump going to do? I There's some talk going around that he might create his own show or his own network, maybe like an Alex Jones, where he's in his basement and he just talks crazy to people for 12 hours. That's my idea. Um, or he just, I don't know what happens. But I'm more concerned about the people who voted for Trump because those are the people that the Republicans are going to have to deal with in the next election. They're going to have to find a way to either talk sense into them or find a way to sort of uh, kind of turn their minds. And I think that it's going to be complicated because their views are so radical that they'll believe any of the conspiracies and the QAnon. And so I feel like the Republicans are going to have to distance themselves. They're going to have to make a change. Otherwise, they're going to keep being within that Sarah Palin Trump sphere, and so they're not going to want to change. They're not going to want to change. They're going to want to stick with that whole idea. So for the Democrats, I feel, again, like I said before, that they're going to have to work on outreach. They're going to have to work on looking at this map and then, well, they already have to start ahead because January 5th in Georgia, there's already two runoffs for the Senate seat. And then they're also going to have to look ahead to 2022 and understand that all of these red states, they had good candidates in Kentucky and in South Carolina. That was the other one for Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham. They had poured in a ton of money, but it doesn't help when you can't really talk to the voters. That's where the issue is. You have to reach out to those other voters that are on the fence or might feel that the other candidate is not really, they're struggling to stick with that candidate. McConnell has been in that seat for a long time. Lindsey Graham hasn't been on there too long. But they're going to have to look ahead to 2022. So those seats are out for another 4 years. So they're going to have to look for, I think, Texas. Ted Cruz might be running again. Beto O'Rourke might try and go for that Senate seat again. And then we've got all the other ones. I don't keep up too much with that, but they're going to have to kind of look forward and really, if they want to have a Senate majority, they're going to have to really look ahead at 2022. And I never understood why when one election ended, they're already talking about the next election. But it makes sense now because it's like you want to get be prepared. You want to look back, say, okay, what mistakes we made, and what can we do for the next election? January 5th, Georgia's having two runoffs with uh, John Ossoff and I forgot the other one, Warnock. The Senate. Let's go to the Senate. John Ossoff and Purdue. That's one. And the QAnon lady, or the lady who said never um, she never heard of the Access Hollywood tape, and Raphael Warnock. That's the other one. So two Senate seats in January 5th, and if they win, they could flip the Senate. If they don't win those two seats, well, then it just stays in Republican control. So now that presidency's decided, um, there's not too much to really follow. Uh, there's obviously they're still going to keep updating the votes and stuff on here. North Carolina, I feel, is most likely going to go to Trump. Georgia, Biden. Arizona, Biden, and then Alaska, Trump. I feel like Alaska and Arizona are going to take a couple days more. North Carolina is going to take a couple days more. Georgia might be in soon. That one I can't really give you an answer. So, and now the parade, they're starting pretty uh, drawn up parade. There's a lot of celebration outside the White House. There's a lot of celebrations going on in the streets, actually, of the out of all the uh, places. And so there was one other thing um, that I forgot to mention about. So I had somebody say um, that so we talked in the last election a lot about the Russian interference in 2016. And so this election, there was still mention of it. However, because the election is going the Biden's way, a lot of people were saying that, or a lot of, I want to say either conservatives or super progressives were saying that now there's no mention of it. Why, why is that not of concern? But if that was the case, I would have think that they would still be trying to go for Trump. Like that just doesn't make any sense to me. Um, you would think, I would still believe, and I feel like now that we have more of an understanding of that we're aware of that's happening. So it's not like we just forgot about it. It's that it is, I believe it's still out there, and that they're still sending out disinformation. And I wouldn't see any reason why they wouldn't want Trump in office, because he is the man of chaos. So this belief that just because we're not talking about it, Putin might have some role behind Biden. It's very, very dumb idea, I believe. Just because you would think uh, Russians would want Trump in office, not Democrats, because Trump is the man of chaos, and we've seen that with his failure, uh, fail, failure in leadership. I can't talk because we still have we still have higher rates of coronavirus. We still have hundreds of thousands that are dead in America. We have millions of people who have coronavirus, and this leadership, you know, should be nationwide, especially at this rate. People in South Korea knew ahead of time, and they had prevented it, and it had spread again, but they stopped everything again and now they have it under control. There's other places that have it under control now. We're the ones that we can't travel out of this country because if we were, they would be like, no, you guys are a one giant hotspot of coronavirus, so please don't come here. So it's not um, it's more of a listen here why it's more of a leadership problem because I feel we've seen Obama handle H1N1, and that's one of the things um, Republicans like to bring up. The failure of H1N1, the failure of Ebola, but that didn't kill 230,000 people, and that didn't infect over, I don't even know how many million. Let me look that up. Um, where are we right now? We are at the cases. Don't they show it? Just looking real quick. Map. Can I see the full map? Full map, please. So, the United States almost has 9,893,000 cases, 570 cases of coronavirus. And the new cases, I believe yesterday was 132,797 new cases in one day, and 237 deaths. I think that is just, it just shows how well our leadership in our government has been, and it hasn't been that well. So I feel like that was one of the main um, that was one of the main reasons Trump lost this election was because he he didn't act fast enough, and I felt like he could have saved himself if he had acted fast enough, and he just didn't care. He took it as a hoax. He had rallies where people were jammed together, most of them not even wearing masks. He had he knew about it for months, as we heard in the Woodward tapes. He knew about it for a long time, and so there's a very particular reason that a lot of people were angry was because he let this happen. He knew that it could travel by air, and then he went on and lied about it and said, "I don't think this is contagious or this can go in the air." He pretty much lied about it and lied to everybody, and so people got sick and people are dying. We're seeing cases in Texas where it's super high and you got overflows, and so now they're treating patients in tents, and it's very disappointing, and I don't understand why we have a president who is just very ignorant about that fact. And that was one of the top reasons why this election was so pivotal was because it just it made people mad. Uh, I would admit that I would say that coronavirus wasn't the only reason that people didn't want Trump to win. We had the whole race issue with uh, with the border and with Black Lives Matter. So that was an issue that really sort of pissed a lot of people off. We had the uh, the economy mainly with the tax plan. Um, I know the economy was doing great, but I don't think it was because of him. I think that was because of what Obama had left. And usually stuff that a previous president leaves takes some time before it starts really showing. And so I'm kind of worried about Biden's administration because some of the stuff that Trump has done might continue on, and especially if he has a Republican-controlled Senate, it may uh, it may hinder him from passing laws. Um, so the Democrats are really going to have to put a leg in it if the Republicans can retain control of the Senate, if they hold uh, that Senate majority. Democrats are really going to have to work hard to push bills through. And we know Mitch McConnell isn't afraid to hold bills up, and um, it still surprises me that he he still has a seat. Um, Turtle Man McConnell, you know, he it just it really it just really irks me that he was able to keep his Senate seat. Um, and so I feel like Democrats are going to have to really, if they really want to flip the Senate, they're really going to have to work in Georgia today to start getting voters to flip the Senate. Because those two seats, he's got a seat in Arizona. If he wins, uh, that's three seats right there. Um, Mark Kelly's already the projected winner for Arizona. McSally was unable to keep her Senate seat in Arizona. So here's the Senate seat. Um, Georgia and North Carolina. There's still a chance in North Carolina. Um, so if Trump gets North Carolina and Alaska, or the Senate seats are Republican there, if the Democrats at least want a 50-50, they're going to have to work hard to get Georgia. They're really going to have to really put a leg in there in Georgia because otherwise uh, the Senate will have two seats that are going toward for the Republicans. So we haven't, even though we don't know yet, I'm pretty sure Alaska is going to stay red. North Carolina most likely will stay red, but it's going to be one one hell of a fight. I can show it. There we go. You can see it better now. But you see right here. So if North Carolina, Alaska, and if Georgia, if the Democrats don't put a leg in Georgia, then one or two of those seats is going to be red. So it could be a 50-50, but I'm going to guess 51-49, and the Democrats don't really get the Senate seat. That's just my guess. I'm trying to think. Um, yeah, and actually, it's right after the election, right after McConnell was guaranteed his win, he then said, "All right, let's work on a stimulus bill." Where was that before the election? Why did he have to wait till after the election? Why what was so important if he lost the election? Was he not going to work on a stimulus bill, or was he just going to just be petty and be mad? So that was my sort of confusion, was like, why wait? You would think that would help you get reelected. Are Kentucky's that conservative to where if you make a stimulus bill now, you're not going to be liked? That I didn't understand. Um, looking at the votes here, uh, Arizona, Biden's ahead by 21,000 votes. Um, Looking at Georgia, Biden's ahead by about 19, 18,000. I want to say 18,000 votes. If you look at North Carolina, Biden is Trump is ahead actually by 80,000. I want to say 80,000, 80, around 80,000. Alaska, that one, he's like 50,000, 51,000, um, and some change ahead. So again, there's not much left. Um, Arizona is not. I feel like it's not going to flip back to red. Georgia might flip blue, and those are just the cherries on the top for Biden at this point. He doesn't even really need the rest of these states. Um, but I feel like North Carolina and Alaska, Trump's easily got. So if we go back, this is my little map here. As I said, this one's gonna go red. Oh, wrong, wrong, wrong camera. But North Carolina is gonna go red. Alaska's gonna go red. Arizona's blue. I'm guessing most likely blue, and Georgia most likely blue as well. Um, so here is it. This is Donald Trump's Twitter. We're just looking through, seeing if he posted anything new yet. Hasn't posted anything since an hour ago. Probably because he's still mad. He was golfing. May I remind you, he was golfing while Biden was called. For a man who really criticized Obama for golfing, he actually has golfed more than Obama has. And I believe Obama's a good golfer, better than Trump. I don't think those shorts really fit him. um, I'm looking real quick for uh, just checking real quick. I'm gonna here we go. Okay. And, um, just give me 1 second. Live. Persona. Wow. I was trying to find any of the live stuff that's happening right now. Any of the live sort of events going on. Live White House. I know there are a lot of people celebrating in front of the White House right now, especially after Biden won. Like, it started off as a small group, and it got bigger. Like, literally over within an hour, it grew, and I think there was people dancing in Pennsylvania because at this point that was it. He didn't really need any of the other states. He doesn't really need North Carolina or Georgia. Doesn't need Arizona or Alaska. It was just one or two, and that's sort of what I was talking about earlier, was that if this election, literally after Tuesday, we knew Pennsylvania was going to take a while. And that's why I had said that it was going to take a few days before a winner was even declared, because most of the results, most of the ballots that were counted had to take a while. They had to take time because of the laws that Republican legislatures had put to prevent them from counting early or counting ahead. And so when election day came, they had to count election ballots and then the rest of the ballots all in less than 24 hours, because as soon as the polls closed, then they had to count those ballots as well. And it was a burden, even with the multiple amounts of voter voters they had, or voter poll workers they had. It was still not enough to really um, it wasn't enough to really be able to get all those votes counted within that single day. And a lot of states who had never really did mail-in voting before were really struggling, because they were trying to process and count them, and then they have to go through the steps of verifying it unless there was any issues. So that was like the main reason why it took so long, and we've known this for months, even since the primaries, the Democratic primaries. This was 10 times that, because we're talking about people who, we're not just talking about Democratic voters, but independent voters and Republican voters who are either voting by mail or coming in and voting. And because the Republican legislature told them, nope, you have to wait till election day to count those early or mail-in ballots, they couldn't count them yet. So that's what really took forever to really do those uh, to count those ballots. Um, so yeah, Biden wins. The question now is, what is Trump going to do? That is a sort of a question for everybody because nobody knows. They're treating him like a child. They're because they're pretty much asking, well, who's going to tell him? You know, who's going to be the person that spoils his day? And even if he doesn't accept it, he's going to have to accept it eventually, and not just him, but also his supporters. And if he doesn't accept it, his supporters aren't going to accept it, and they're going to be mad, and they're just going to have to accept that. You know, tit for tat. You know, this is what happened 4 years ago. You're on the receiving end of the stick this time. You're going to have to accept it. There's no, you know, there's no finding extra votes. There's no addition of or not legal votes. These are the actual results. And Republicans have done studies and they've only found like 0.1, 0.2, 0.3% of actual voter fraud. So it's like you you can't keep you got to accept it eventually. 4 years ago, a lot was at stake. We had a Supreme Court, or just one Supreme Court, one guy, and this whole mountain of hatred and bigotry and homophobia that and racism that Trump was bringing in, and there was just so much. And he has done so much in these just 4 years. Three Supreme Court justices, hundreds of uh, justices below the Supreme Court, uh, a fence that really isn't stopping much, a an impeachment trial, a uh, so much has happened. There's just so much that I could spend hours talking about, and it's like now we've had we this is it happens every 4 years. People go in, they vote, and they vote based on their own conscience, not because anybody's forcing them to. They go in and they say, were we better off 4 years? And then they vote. And you're going to have to accept the fact that 74 million people voted for the other guy and not your guy because they saw trouble in your guy. And 2.5 million people voted for the third guy. And I don't know why. um, but Trump claims that those 70 million that voted for him are legal votes, even though they're all legal votes. Counting takes a while. I know everybody was complaining because they wanted it done now, and it's just that most of the states weren't prepared for this amount of mail-in ballots, and then they had the provisional ballots. Because it was so close, they just didn't want to call it right away. We knew Biden was going to win. That was a given. They just didn't want to call it right away because they didn't want to be wrong and mess up. Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Thank you. NBC News live coverage. So that was the other thing. When Trump got in coronavirus, one of his staff was saying uh, that he wasn't. They didn't say he wasn't infected. They just said we're doing all we can. Uh, and he wasn't wearing a mask. And then the reporter had asked him about it. Why aren't you wearing a mask? And he said, well, you guys are distant enough from me, so I don't need to wear a mask. Plus, you guys can't hear me. That guy got infected with coronavirus, and apparently three more aides had also gotten infected with coronavirus along with him. So the chief of staff, so he had not only had he tested positive, but three of his the White House staffers had also tested. So I just I guess there's going to have to be a precaution when Biden goes in. He's just going to have to spray the entire White House with Lysol before he goes in. Just clean everything from top to bottom because that you know that was a like a hot zone of its own, the White House. Um, and it's it's spread, and the president again was like, "It's fine. You get it. I get it. We'll all be fine. We'll all be okay." That's another thing that was dangerous. Herd immunity is not good. If if you have coronavirus, you can most likely get it again. It doesn't make you invincible. And a person, I don't know if it's changed or not, but a person actually died because they had coronavirus and then they got it, and the second time they got it, actually died from it. True story. Oh, fuck. Drop water. But yeah, it's this constant cycle of lies that the president just talks about, and I think America was just tired of it. I was tired of the constant noise that was coming out of the White House. And I feel like that when Joe Biden comes in, he's going to have to really put a foot on things, put a brake on everything that was going on. And he'll have people when he goes into the White House. It's not going to be like Trump, who didn't know who to really hire. He's actually going to have people ready to work and have positions filled. It's not going to be the first guy he sees on TV to run the White House. So there's just so much to look forward to, because it's like we're not going to go through a phase where we don't know if somebody's running something or not. We don't know if the president is mad, so we can't do that thing. We don't. It doesn't have to be all based on, is the president mad, so is he gonna call a nuclear strike on somebody? So that's like the main relief, is that it's not going to be constant chaos anymore. That doesn't mean there isn't going to be any news coming out or new things happening. That is, you know, that is with any that goes with any presidency. But the main thing here is that it's not because of what the president said or what the president did. It may be because of what somebody else did or what some senator did, like the good old times. Um, do want to go back to my map. I don't think they've called. Uh, no, they haven't called any other state yet. But yeah, so looking forward to inauguration day because eventually, uh, eventually Trump's gonna have to leave, whether it's by force or whether it's not by force. He's gonna have to go. He can't stay in there. I they like that's gonna be something they're going to have to like really capture because now that'll be something. But if he wants to do the smart thing, it's accept the results and move on. That's it. Like you really messed things up. Um, I would say I'm happy about this. Not like I was uh, 8 years ago when Obama won re-election. Um, I am happy that Trump is no longer going to be in office and that Biden has won. But I feel like within the Democratic Party, there's also a struggle there as well. Because a lot of the younger voters are in 4 years, there are going to be more younger voters, and the Democratic Party is going to have to ask itself, um, is its ideals going to move more progressive, or is it not going to move more progressive? There are, you know, there are things with Biden and Harris that uh, Democrats, especially progressive Democrats, don't like. Um, but they would rather vote for Biden than Trump, you know. And I feel like as the years go on, the more progressive voice is uh, gonna start to be more of the main voice of the Democratic Party, whereas some people call the radical left. Um, and so uh, for Republicans, though, the radical right, that's more of a issue that needs to be resolved separately. Um, and yeah, it's an issue. It's it's an issue for them. Um, I'm gonna take a break right now. I need some water. I'll be right back. I'll give me like 2 minutes. I'm back. Look at my stupid poster board. Oh shit, I was kind of uh, lagging there. But yes, okay, there we go. Okay, my thing's back on. So now you can hear me now. I was talking. I didn't realize it was off. I was saying that um, it's going to take some time before we see any recovery. I know he's not. He won't be inaugurated until the 20th, and that is, um, you know, the. Uh, it, I just think it's going to be hard right now because we won't really get a full full understanding of what's going to happen next. We're going to enter this phase where we have to first of all deal with a month, a couple months and a half of a president who has just lost his reelection. So for these next for this next month and 2 months and a half, all bets are off as to what's going to happen. Is he going to pass more laws? What is he going to try and overturn in the courts? What is he, everything's on the table right now as to what's going to happen because he has control of the House and the Senate still. Um, Nothing will really change when Biden. If the Democrats don't happen to take those Senate seats, it's really going to be Democrats have control of the presidency and Democrats have control of the House. They won't have control of the Senate, and so that is going to be a difficult sort of. That is something they're going to have to deal with and sort of fix. Um, but we still have probably the next couple days. We'll find out. Um, at least North Carolina, we know already Arizona, the Senate's blue. Most likely, Joe Biden's going to win the presidency, or he has won the presidency. I'm saying he's going to win the electoral votes in Arizona and Georgia. We just hope that the flip will happen for the Senate in North Carolina, hopefully. But that's something they're going to really have to sort of put a leg in if they don't win this one. So about 106,000 behind. There is still 176,000 votes for. Here we go. There is still 176,000 remaining votes in North Carolina, so it could go the other way, possible. But we will see. And it's just at this point we just kind of see what happens. Hope that the Senate flips. We won't really have an understanding as to what. It's just the part of what's going to happen next. When is it going to happen? Why it's going to happen? Not why, but we know why. We know that Trump isn't going to want to give up his presidency. So he is going to try everything in the courts, which he has no real factual evidence or real factual. There's a reason Michigan threw out his case, and that's because there was no basis in reality, there was no basis in fact. So we will see how far that goes. And the other thing is that, because of his lack of willing to want to accept the results, how long before he accepts it, or at least is told you got to get out, because we might just keep watch until next year just to see what happens. But this election, there's a reason that there's talk of election day every 4 years, and there's a reason that there's a fight for the next election, and it's because we don't know what's going to happen in 4 years. We don't know what's going to happen in 2 years. And so when you look at this map, it becomes a sort of idea to try and figure out where what is the next step in fixing, in sort of dealing with these other states? Doesn't matter whether you're Democrat or Republican. You're gonna have to figure out a way. Okay, how do we talk to these voters? How do we talk to those voters? And sort of that's the real question for any campaign. But there's a reason you know that people sort of talk about these elections way in advance because in 4 years or 2 years they want to get reelected. You gotta, or they want to elect somebody. You gotta figure out who you're gonna talk to and um, which states are more important. There's a reason uh, in the primaries, especially, they visit Iowa and New Hampshire, and that for reason being is because those are the first two states in any primary. Now, when we're talking about the campaign, you want to go to as many of the ones with the most numbers as possible. Surprisingly, Arizona was a battleground state this year. That's not really, uh, it's not really a battleground state. It hasn't been for a while, but this year it was because if Biden had gotten Arizona and Nevada, it would have been done. Well, it would have been done with Pennsylvania too, but if he hadn't gone Pennsylvania, Arizona and Nevada were two states that he could have gotten, and he could have won. Georgia was another one. Georgia hasn't been blue, I believe, since. Let me see here. 207 to win. I think they said since the 60s. I could be wrong. Here we go. Since Georgia. So we see Georgia 2016, 2004, 2000. Since 92 was the last time Georgia was blue. And the last time Arizona, I don't know if you can see. Yeah, you can. So you can see here. These are the past elections, general elections. Here's 2016. Then you got 2012, 2008, and so on. But the last time Arizona was blue was 96, and then the last time Georgia was blue was 92. And that's why Georgia, even though it wasn't really a big deal, it became a big deal because uh, in the past few elections, Georgia was like, why waste time in Georgia? There's a reason people in this past election were like, Biden must see confidence in Georgia because he's making pit stops in Georgia. He's got Obama going to Georgia. Why is that such? And we saw in those states, in those counties, that the majority of black voters really sort of, if that state eventually goes to Biden, they're the ones that really mainly flipped it blue. And so that'll be something that the Republicans will have to look at. They're really going to have to do an autopsy on this election. Um, I can't see a past election where it matches this one. So these are all the previous elections, but I don't see one that sort of matches this election. Of course, we got all these. It matches this one. No, um, not within, like, at least before the 1920s. Do we see one, or after the 1920s, do we see one that sort of matches uh, this one? Um, Maybe 2008 or 2012, sort of the closest, but at that time Florida was blue. Florida this year went red. Texas hadn't been blue since '76, so if it were to flip it, that would be a big shocker for Democrats. But I think there's still work that they need to do out there in order to sort of get that vote. Um, but yeah, uh, not really much I can compare this election to. It's not '96 where it's like overwhelmingly blue, but it's not 2012 where Florida. I think if you replaced, um, but if also Georgia goes blue as well, so those are the sort of two that sort of differentiate. I can't say the word. That sort of differentiates the two elections. Um, but yeah, that election was it was important, and it sort of shows the it shows that this this election especially we can see where the differences are, and um, I want to say 2012 was the one most closest to this one. The major differences are Georgia's blue, Florida's red, and Arizona's blue. He's on his way to 306, so I wouldn't be surprised if uh, he didn't win Georgia and Arizona, but he's on his way to winning those states. Um, so yeah, Nevada was called for Biden finally. So for those of you who were upset that Nevada wasn't called yet, it finally got called like a year later. Um, but those are the states um, uh, that sort of that sort of stick out. Um, these are photos from Harlem. Everybody was dancing in the streets. I would sing the song, but I think that's copyright, so I don't want to get I don't want to get flagged for a song. But no, literally, that's what one of the headlines said, is that people were literally dancing in the streets because they were so happy. There was so much, uh, you know, they were just glad that this reign of Trumpism is finally over. And it really showed this election how much people really really didn't like his policies, and so another common sort of if I turn back to the map to show you real quick. Oh, there's me. Don't show me. we go. I'll just show that. Okay, so looking back at the map, all this red, I know a lot of Republicans always make that every election year as to why, why there's all this red, but all these other states uh, that are, sort of smaller, kind of have more electoral votes or have bigger numbers. It's mainly because all this, all these red uh, states are usually more rural states. They're more spread out, and so if you were to uh, sort of, there was a little graphic where they kind of made them into circles to kind of show why the states are that way, and it shows that obviously there's more population in California. There's some metro areas, some there. It's where the bigger cities are, where you'll see a more population of people, and so that's why um, those states with the most numbers are usually all around, because that's where most people are. And these smaller numbers are usually the ones with not a lot of people, more rural farm folk people, maybe some Amish people, just not a lot of people within that. Um, and this is another reason why I hate the Electoral College, and I've always hated it, whether it was 2 elections ago, 5 elections ago, Bush v. Gore, uh, Clinton v. Trump, uh, Obama v. Romney. I've always hated it because it's like a majority of Americans are voting for this candidate, but yet uh, sometimes the electoral map can disproportionately, you know, represent that state. We have newer technology now. We have newer systems now where we can get a real result of the amount of people that are voting. Why do we have this arcane system where we are depending on uh, these electoral college votes? And again, this system has been there since the 1800s. Uh, I believe it was also it's just a very dumb system that doesn't represent everybody. Again, as we've seen in Clinton v. Trump, Bush v. Gore, I think there was another one. I'm pretty sure there was a third. But between those two, the losing candidate had won more votes than the winning candidate. Yet the Electoral College said, okay, that other candidate with the least amount of votes still gets it because they got these states, which I think is dumb because especially now we have better technology. We can count votes uh, depending on the um, uh, depending on how many of those people have those uh, actual votes. I've always thought it was dumb. I know conservatives like to bring it up every time a Democrat wins. Oh, you like the Electoral College now? I've always hated it. I've always thought it was dumb. um, I don't know if Arizona probably won't get more votes if later tonight around 9 o'clock it'll get more votes. What I've been seeing is 9 p.m. and 9 a.m. is when they have been releasing their batch of votes. Um, but I think Biden's going to win. Georgia, they've been releasing every couple hours, but Biden is on track to win that one. Same with North Carolina. North Carolina is taking its time because it's also making sure it counts the mail-in ballots. They want to make sure all the votes are counted, especially the military ballots. So they just want to make sure they get everybody. And for some reason, for conservatives, that just seems sort of dumb. Um, so I just, again, like as it's been mentioned in these past couple of days, in the amount of time we've in the past 4 days that we've been counting all these ballots, and so in some states they want to keep counting, in other states they want to stop counting. When they were yelling to stop the counting, by then Biden had already gotten Wisconsin, and that's the thing that's going to suck about this next month is even though all the votes are already going to be counted, I already expect Trump to ask for recounts in every single state that he can get a recount in. So even though all the counts are in now, for most of the states, Trump is going to kind of prolong it so that way he can be sure that Biden is the actual winner, even though Biden is the actual winner, and so again, he's even called for Alex Jones to instigate this conspiracy theory that uh, that that Trump is the real winner, even though he is not. So I know in Arizona Alex Jones was actually in Phoenix yelling at the crowd to sort of hyping them up about some sort of voter fraud that isn't even existent. But yeah, so it's just his belief in conspiracy theories is sort of what is causing, this mass idea of misinformation. And so we kind of, that's the sort of thing with Trumpism, is the idea of belief in that anything that is based in real information is actually misinformation. The whole idea of fake news. And so that is sort of what is, I want to say, wrong with this idea of Trumpism, is because he brought this whole idea into existence, and it wasn't with just the help of him. It was the help of Russia bringing this whole idea of chaos, because they know that chaos in America, people want to riot, people want to get mad, and so they like that. They like when the first world country isn't a first world country. They like that idea of chaos. And so that's why in 2016 they helped him win that election. However, in this election they didn't seem like they helped him much. It didn't seem like him being a figure was sort of the Uh, it didn't seem like that was sort of him being this figure for misinformation is what problematic with the Republican Party, because they're going to have to eventually have voters. They're going to have to get voters to understand uh, that uh, that they're going to have to believe in reality. And that's sort of the issue that's going to be have to dealt with the new Republican candidate, whoever it is, within the next 4 years. Is, are the Republicans going to go for someone more radical, or are they going to go for someone more moderate? Um, and that was the issue of 2016. Was a lot of the more moderate candidates were hoping that Trump didn't win, but Trump feasted on his whole idea of self-worth and his hysteria, and so that is eventually what got him elected. I did want to show this video, but I don't know. No, you can't hear it. Okay, let me see if I can connect it. Um, Sorry, I'm trying to figure this out so that way. Okay, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to play this video, but I can't seem to get it, the audio in sync here. Yes, do. I liked this video and it was pretty funny, but I can't seem to get it to work. So, um, yeah, that's pretty much it. Uh, like I said, in a sort of conclusion, wrap up everything, finish all this, be done with it, sort of thing. Um, we are okay. Wait, wait a second. And to sort of wrap up, I just want to finish off main points here. Um, Biden's going to win Arizona. Biden's going to win Georgia. Trump's going to win Alaska. Trump's going to win North Carolina. Doesn't really matter, but Biden will pretty much just pad in his pad his lead. Um, and so um, the reason voting took so long was because mail-in ballots had to be processed on election day. It was mainly the blame by Republican legislatures, so that's the main reason why it took so long. Not because uh, some illegal ballots were found in some sort of back of the news van kind of thing. Um, it's because Republicans in the Republican states did not want uh, to did tried to delay those votes to make it seem like it was suspicious that these votes came out of nowhere, kind of thing. So that's why they took counting took so long, memes, everything, all of that stuff came out, and so that's just why we that's just simply the what do you call it, the spark notes or cliff notes of what happened these past few days. Um, so Biden's win was inevitable. Uh, Coronavirus. All I'm gonna say, coronavirus plus some extra things. But I felt like had the coronavirus not happened, he would have won a re-election with the economy. And the Republicans, they're gonna struggle. I don't know what's going to happen or what they're going to vote for their newer for their next candidate. We went from John McCain to Donald Trump in 3 elections, so we just have to see how the Republicans distance themselves or sort of maybe even bring him into Republican politics. He'll probably become a political analyst on Fox News. I wouldn't be surprised. Just talk for hours about himself or something. I don't know. But that's sort of the question for Republicans. What are they going to do? What are they going to do with Trump supporters? That's the other issue. Are they going to join their own third party? Hopefully, I don't know. Democrats also had a rough night, even though it was expected that they weren't going to win Texas or Florida. The polls were actually mostly accurate. Um, Florida was slightly favored for Biden, but it wasn't really guaranteed. So I know some of the questions were the polls accurate? Were they not accurate? I was kind of watching them prior to the day, election day, and it was showing that South Carolina and Kentucky were most likely leaning Republican. So they were mostly accurate. Democrats are just going to have to find a strategy to sort of encapsulate those Republican areas and also deal with the fact that more Florida Latinos were the ones who, more Latinos in general were voted for Trump. Uh, so that is going to be something that they're also going to have to deal with. What happens next? We got a runoff on January 5th for the 2 Georgia Senate seats, and for the Democrats, they're going to have to start working right away. Um, and there's an infight between both parties, between the radicals and the not so radical, or the moderates and the radicals, and that goes for any party. Um, but the Democrats are also having an infight of. Uh, I know Nancy Pelosi wants to regain her House Speaker seat, but she might have actually a sort of a fight to regain her House seat. There was an issue 2 years ago as well, when the Democrats did win the House over, about her regaining her seat. More of the five did have a question, uh, or AOC plus three. I think it's that one. AOC plus three did not want Pelosi to actually regain her seat. So I feel like as the elections go on, they're going to be uh, more voters, more younger voters with more progressive voices. So we'll sort of see take over the Democratic Party, and more of the moderates may wean out. That's just my opinion, but that's what I feel like is going to happen. Um, but yes, I do feel like this election showed both parties kind of where their standing is right now and where they need to work at. So I know a lot of the Republicans would like to think that the Democrats haven't really changed anything. I just felt like most of the polls actually were more accurate uh, this time around. I know 2016 the polls were showing ahead. There were some states that were off uh, that showed Biden ahead, but that is where the Democrats are going to have to work on trying to fix those uh, fix those broken um, I don't know what to call it, broken systems. I want to say that's just my guess. Um, I do plan on continuing this, not this election special. I wouldn't call it that at this point. The election is over. But I would like to continue talking about politics at least once a week or once every other week, uh, just to kind of update on the sort of stuff, this sort of stuff, because it's going to keep going on. Even though Biden and Harris are now going to be the president and vice president elect, there's still stuff that's going to be talked about. Most likely, there's going to be a Republican Senate, and unless the Democrats pull a leg, either way, if they do, it might be a 50-50. But if not, Republicans are going to stronghold the House. The fact that they don't have the Senate or the presidency, there's going to be a real infight between the Senate and the House and the president. So the question is, is the Senate, if it is won by the Republicans, are they going to try their best to work with the president or try their best not to? Again, as we've seen in past politics, I feel like they're not going to. And Democrats are really going to have to work hard for the next 2 years to try and, if they really want to uh, have, uh, if they really want to have control. Um, as for the Republicans, this really is should be an eye opener for them, um, because they might have believed that Trump had it in the bag, or they might have believed Trump was was sort of immortal politically, but they're really going to have to push it. If they don't want this trend to continue, they're going to really need to sort of talk to those other voters in those other states and find out what really was the issue. I personally feel like it was the coronavirus. You look at the bigger states, like New York, that's mainly blue either way, but that's where one of the hot spots was at, and Trump kind of didn't really give them help because they weren't favoring him. So that's pretty much it. I'll probably come back in a few days or another week. I I, I don't have anything else to talk about. Um, this this was fun. uh, uh, that guy right there. That's so. I will show one last time. I'll show you. This is my little cutout. That's actually not even mine. I bought it at Party City, $10. So, all right, I'm going now. Hopefully, I can do this again. Hopefully soon. If not soon, probably a week. Um, but this, I'm just very happy and very tired. I've been nonstop watching MSNBC, watching Steve Kornacki, uh, just trying to hope that somebody would come up with something already. And uh, that's it. I can take a break now. Probably gonna just focus on. Well, I have to focus on other stuff, but um, this this election really uh, is uh, it uh, really gave me hope, and I feel like things will change once January 20th rolls around. Again, they won't be dramatic, and we will still have coronavirus. And I think people should understand that it's probably not going to go away. At this rate, it may continue on until we have a vaccine, until we can get people vaccinated. But at this rate, we might see it for another 2 years until we can fully, until it can fully go away. Uh, all right. Well, that's it. Thank you all for watching. I will see you next time. Bye. Just show you again real quick.